Aloha, my name is John Quindara, and welcome to my presentation of my research entitled Low-Rise, High-Density Housing in Hawaii, an Affordable Housing Alternative for the Families of Hawaii. In this research, we'll explore some of the current challenges Hawaii faces in terms of housing and propose an alternative housing design for the families of Hawaii. First, we will look into some of the challenges the state is facing when it comes to housing. Studies show that more and more residents are moving away from the islands to the mainland, affecting Hawaii's population. Although that can be attributed to a number of different factors, the main influence is the high cost of living in the islands. This can be due to the lack of housing supply throughout the state, with research predicting approximately 77,000 new homes needed to keep up with the housing demand, a number that would be difficult to reach. In an attempt to provide more housing to the population, suburban communities or sprawl have popped up around the islands, consuming much of the island's beautiful, untouched, and agricultural lands, and contributing to many of Hawaii's issues. From 1974 to 2014 itself, almost 57,000 acres were reclassified from ag and conservation use to urban district use. This is important to note because the continuation of such developments can lead to the further desecration of Hawaii's sacred aina. While building out or sprawl may seem like an easy solution to provide more housing, taking advantage of undeveloped lots or infill lots within already developed districts can protect our aina and prove more sustainable. It can also place residents closer to necessary services like employment and shopping. Data shows that throughout the state, there are more than 78,000 acres of undeveloped land within urban zone districts, with more than 24,000 acres on Oahu alone. Developing infill lots could lead to more dense neighborhoods and possibly more walkable communities, which can provide such benefits as decreased dependence on automobiles, an increased social interaction, decreased transportation expenses, increased sense of pride for the community, an increase in housing affordability, and finally, preservation of land. One way that developers choose to densify urbanly is through high-rises. Although high-rises do help with density and possibly sustainability, studies show that there is still a preference in single-family homes. In Hawaii itself, studies show that almost two-thirds of the population would prefer to live in a single-family home than a high-rise or other multi-family housing typology. This has led me to the following question: how do we market density? If families prefer to live in single-family homes, but more dense communities can prove to be sustainable for families and the land, is there a common ground between the two that can take advantage of dense communities as well as provide a single-family home? That question has led me to this project and study. The goal of this project is to provide families of Hawaii with a unique housing design that delivers on the aspect of comfortable density for Hawaii. To accomplish this, the design will incorporate density, the single-family home experience, and local traditions and way of life. This will all be done within a flexibility within the codes and regulations, all within low-rise housing typologies to help with the single-family home experience, as well as a multi-family housing. Research and design will be done at 3 different scales. This is important because the full potential of any dwelling design will depend highly on its site context and implementation and the grander urban design. The first step was to select an appropriate site for the project. The island of Oahu was chosen due to its role as the urban core in relation to the rest of the islands. In canvassing the island and finding a site, Kapolei on the west side of the island seemed like a perfect fit. Kapolei's relatively undeveloped urban core allowed a perfect blank canvas to redesign and implement my project. It was also deemed as Oahu's second city based on its potential in terms of development and commercialization. So the first step was to look in Kapolei in general. I looked at the zoning as well as the existing developments, open spaces, and buildings and streets. I decided to focus my project on the eastern part of the city known as East Kapolei. This was the ideal site due to its concentration of commercial buildings in that area and relatively undeveloped lots within the half-mile radius. Developing this site will help bring residents closer to services such as employment, retail, and other public services. After selecting the site, it was now time to redevelop East Kapolei. 3 case studies were researched for the master plan ideas, them being Fort Worth, Seaside, Florida, and downtown Kendall. The 4 principles taken away from all of these case studies were the use of pedestrian paths, narrow roads, using main anchor points to connect the city, and a true garden city. So taking the existing site and implementing those 4 principles into the site, the result is a redesigned East Kapolei with increased landscaping, pedestrian paths, city anchor points, and an overall increase of density and walkability throughout the site. The next step was to develop a chosen block within the city. This diagram shows the current vacant undeveloped lots available for lease or sale within the city. The chosen site, which is approximately 3 acres in size and level grade, was chosen due to its location in relation to the park, schools, and other services important for families. With that block, a quick density study was conducted to get a sense of possible general layouts of the block, as well as test different housing topologies from single-family homes to townhomes. All low-rise housing topology was used to gauge the amount of density possible on the lot. From that study, 4 principles were taken away. Having each dwelling have its own slice of paradise, each dwelling feeling as a part of a whole, having a general space for everyone, all the residents to use, and the opportunity for mixed use on every lot, or the opportunity for the families to run their own businesses if desired within their own dwellings. From those principles, the block was developed as followed, with individual lots, shared spaces for everyone to use, and cluster groups of dwellings for them to be part of a whole. Once the general layout of the block was decided on, it was important to establish a general density target in relation to the rest of the city. This was done by selecting 3 different housing topologies and researching their density numbers. They were a hypothetical single-family home development on the chosen block and 2 existing housing developments near the chosen site, Copley Lofts and Hale Moena. To extract densities in these developments, an average of 3 persons per dwelling were used, based on census numbers. As the project attempts to provide more density than a single-family home development, the target was to get as close to the walk-up apartment density as possible without sacrificing the experience of a single-family home. All of this study and research led up to the design of the new dwelling for Hawaii. 3 case studies were selected and studied based on their innovation and similarity to my project and site. They were the half house, the Moriyama house, and the mixed-use house. After research and diving into those case studies, 4 main principles were taken. 1, having the house having a room to grow or able to expand as a family grows and their needs change, flexibility inside and out, indoor and outdoor design, and compartmentalized living, or the separation of different programs and rooms into different structures on the lot. It was also important to study the single-family home and understand the experience that comes with it. Study and research shows that the single-family home experience can be defined into 4 different principles. 1 being privacy, both physical, visual, and audio, space around or yard space, ample windows for lighting and for breeze, and the feeling of independence or autonomy within the home. This led me to a study of the home's programs. I looked at the average sizes of essential programs in a home and adjusted their sizes for construction efficiency. I then came to the question of, how do we densify without compromising space? As I attempt to densify the block, there will be a presumption of loss of space both within and outside the home. So how can I design density without it feeling too cramped or overcrowded? I began to explore the following 3 questions. What if the home had no walls? What if only private spaces were enclosed? And what if the entire lot was your living space? From those questions, I divided up the programs into 2 separate groups. Rooms that can be completely open and without walls, and ones that needed added privacy and security. I then took those 2 programs and began to place them on top of one another to create what I call stacks. The top 3 stacks on this slide, or residential stacks, are made up of more private, secured spaces like bedrooms and bathrooms, while the bottom stack, or common stack, is made up of more open public programs of a home. The residential stacks all vary in size and makeup, but is generally where the residents would sleep, bathe, or retreat for privacy, and the common stacks would act as a shared space between the residents. In developing the stack, it was important that each stack contained important principles. In the residential stack, natural ventilation and lanai spaces were important for comfort, as well as incremental spaces that could be built in over time if the family needed more time to grow. Finally, the bottom level of the residential stack would be used as a flex space, or space that could be used for commercial/retail space if desired by the family. This will help with income for the families to supplement for the cost of the home. The common stack was made up of shared spaces that would be left as open as possible, much like an open pavilion. This stack could provide an open roof space as well that would supplement the loss of yard space around the home. As density increases, the amount of open space around the home would decrease. Thus, provided space to supplement that loss is very important. In laying out the lots, the dwelling would be laid out as such. The lot was divided into 3 different bands. The idea is that the main family or the owner of the lot would inhabit the residential band or main stack near the rear of the dwelling. Their home stack would be tucked away from the street for added privacy. They could then use the flex band to rent out more space for tenants of other family members and also use it for retail/commercial use. This band would provide much needed added income to the family and also provide more housing for other residents to use. The middle band or sustaining band would be where the common stack would sit. This would serve as a buffer between the 2 opposite bands for added privacy for the instance that multiple families inhabited the lot. Once the lot layout was decided, the last step was to redesign the stacks themselves. The simple structures were designed as such, with modern shed roofs, monochromatic color palettes, wood finishes for both the lanai and the window. They also included vertical shading devices, sliding louvers for added privacy, and walls that divided the lots. Another crucial part of design was the ability for each stack to change over time. As a family grows and needs more space, the stack could also grow in phases. This meant the addition of void levels that could be filled in the future. Each stack was designed with different variations, much like this program. Stack 1 and its variations. Stack 2 with its variations, as well as the main stack, showing how it can grow over time. As mentioned, these stacks have the ability to be added on and filled in when needed to adjust to the needs of the family. The highest floor would be the third floor with a shed roof signifying the completion of any stack. The common stack was treated as an open pavilion structure with green and or recreational spaces on the second floor. This stack was designed to be open to take advantage of Hawaii's climate, but also provide more open space to the lot. The intention of this common stack would be to serve as the main gathering area for the family or families that inhabit the lot. It would provide gardening spaces, recreational space, and overall more open space for the residents to build relationships and spend more time together. Just as the stacks can grow over time, the same idea goes for the lot in general. In a hypothetical example, let's say a young family of 3 buys a lot and lives in the rear main stack. They have a family-run business and utilize one of the flex spaces as a home office, and then receive more income from renting out the second stack to another business and a tenant. 10 years later, the family grows and begins to expand their stack and then fill in additional space in the flex band for more income from more tenants. Finally, 20 years later, the family completes their main stack and the other flex stacks and result in a lot that houses 10 residents and 2 businesses, all on 4,000 square feet of land, and all while providing space and privacy for all of the users. This is an example of the 3 developed lots next to each other. Once the stacks were fully developed, they were placed back on the lot. In a quick analysis of the development, although the block was a lot more densified, it did, however, give a sense of overcrowding. To help with this, 4 lots were cleared from the dwelling to add more green space throughout the block. The result was 4 additional green spaces that the residents could use. It also divided the block into 4 hypothetical groups of open space and surrounding dwellings that could help in community building and relationship strengthening. After the final block design was created, it was measured back to the original density benchmark. Within the 3 acres, the new development boasted about 74 persons per acre, which is more than 3 times that of the single-family home development and almost equal to that of the walk-up apartment development, Kapolei Lofts. The design provided on the initial block level guidelines of your own space of paradise, feeling a part of a whole, a space for all, and mixed on every lot, as well as the dwelling concepts of room to grow with the incremental spaces, flexibility inside and out with the separation of structures, indoor-outdoor design with the pavilion, shared space, and the lanais, and compartmentalized living. And most importantly, the design was able to densify the block while also providing the single-family home experience. It provided privacy, space around, ample windows, and independency and autonomy. Here's a conceptual view of the development in relation to the site. The final development was entitled Pilina, which means relationship or bond in Hawaiian, which could signify the relationship built within the tight density area. Here's a conceptual view of the final block design, as well as a rendered view of the 3 lots next to each other, and a street view. Now, although such a development design may seem completely different than the typical developments of today, such a development doesn't differ too far from the current and typical zoning laws of a typical R5 zoning home. As you can see here, there's a slight difference in size, setbacks, with the main difference being the number of structures that could house residents on one lot. In conclusion, this was just one example of what the future of housing could look like in Hawaii in terms of detached homes. Although it isn't the only design that could work, this study brought out 4 main principles that need to be utilized for any future high-density development in Hawaii. They are shared programs, creative open spaces, indoor and outdoor design, and implementation of more walkable communities. In conclusion, such a development is crucial for Hawaii. Although increased housing density is important for the future of the islands and its land, high-density projects could be met with much pushback and criticism, as families still desire to live in single-family homes. Developing such projects as this will allow the residents of Hawaii to shift to density at an easier pace. This will allow the state to provide future, sustainable communities that will benefit the people and protect the land. Mahalo.